And now to part 2 of our program, another look at ISIL. They say an army marches on its stomach. In other words, it's important to keep soldiers well fed and motivated, but it's also true of a group like ISIL. And it appears their motivation comes from plain old money. ISIL is selling oil $1 million worth a day, and some of it to its biggest enemies, Turkey and the Kurds in northern Iraq. Of course, Turkey and the Kurds deny this. Turkey actually says it confiscated 78 million litres of oil last year. And there's another more sinister revenue stream, $20 million that ISIL has gained from hostage ransoms. Now, Nick Shiffrin from Al Jazeera America gained rare access to those inside ISIL, and in doing so, found out more about a kind of mercenary motivation.
Down a bumpy Turkish road just a few feet from the Syrian border, we set out in search of ISIL's source of income. Inside Syria and Iraq, ISIL controls dozens of oil fields. The U.S. estimates ISIL sells 30,000 barrels a day for $1 to $2 million. The gas is then smuggled into Turkey. Turkish soldiers recently discovered how. The gas is either pumped through underground pipes, or smugglers move it across the river in jerry cans. The gas is then transported in vans or in secret gas tanks inside of buses.
Your income depends on how much gas you bring. If you bring a ton, you make 400, 900, 1,300. You bring 10 tons, you make 10,000 a night. It depends on how good you are.
In a hotel room near the Syrian border, over half a pack of cigarettes, a 27-year-old who wants to be known as Salam revealed ISIL's social media strategy. For a relatively large salary, he and 3 others would spend days online. They painted ISIL as a pious, popular, and prosperous army. They disparaged Syrian fighters who opposed them as incompetent infidels.
I'm thinking like I'm in the dream world.
The foreign fighters who already joined ISIL gave us their friends' contacts. Media is the most important thing for ISIL to attract foreign fighters and create popularity in Syria and Iraq.
And try and create popularity that spans generations. ISIL calls them its cubs, their hands not large enough to properly hold assault rifles, their minds not old enough to resist propaganda. A man who wants to be known as Omar saw those children up close. He used to work for ISIL in Raqqa, ISIL's headquarters.
What they work on most is recruiting children. When children are brainwashed at a young age, they become strong-willed and believe they will find redemption when they are martyred.
And connecting every aspect, the group's ruthlessness.
They value spilling blood. They have no mercy. Islam is merciful, but for them, people's lives are cheap.
Well, around 3 months ago, we discussed ISIL and its funding with Michael Stevens from RUSI, that is the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies. Well, he was in Erbil in Iraq at the time. He's back in London now and joins us for a follow-up chat. Nice to see you again, Michael. What has changed with ISIL since we last spoke, so far as its credit lines go, given that it's taken over oil refineries and the like since then?
I would say that ISIS has now been able to solidify its control over certain areas, particularly in sort of heartlands of Mosul, in Anbar province, also in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, and they've been able to basically instill a sort of very rudimentary system of government in those areas. It's not been easy, and the reason it's not been easy is because in the time that we last talked, which was about 3-4 months ago, the coalition has formed. It has taken airstrikes against the Islamic State. It has targeted infrastructure. It has targeted their ability to fight, their ability to move supplies and surplus materials around, the kinds of weapons, oil products, even money, because you've got to ship money around in trucks as well. So they've come under a lot of pressure in terms of their everyday ability to run their state entity. And we're seeing some hardships as a result of that. So we're seeing electricity shortages, water shortages, and what looked to be quite a successful enterprise is now clearly feeling the pinch.
OK, so let's focus on one issue in all of that, and that is the oil. You've got this falling oil price at the moment. How does that affect both sides here? Because you've got ISIS, or ISIL, which has the access to the oil, but you've also got these GCC states who produce oil and who in some cases have been accused of supporting ISIL.
Yes, and at the end of the day, I think that the prices that ISIS is able to export its oil at, sort of $25 a barrel, perhaps if there's a middleman in the way it goes up to 45, they're still pretty competitive. I don't expect this falling oil price unless it really goes below $40 a barrel, which I think would be very excessive indeed, to substantially cut into ISIS's ability to sell oil. Now, let's be honest here. ISIS is making money off of its enemies. There are Shia militias which allow trucks to pass through their territory carrying ISIS oil. They take a cut. These trucks then go out to Turkey. They go out to Iran. Some Kurds are involved in this as well. And right now there are senior Kurds under investigation for facilitating those movements of oil. So in terms of the business that's going on, I'm afraid the black market is still pretty strong. And whilst it's decreased, probably some estimates say 50%, it's still very, very vigorous, and that process is ongoing. Of course, ISIS is also able to sell oil to its citizens, if you like, and if reports are to believe, they control some 8 million people who all need to fill their cars up, and so they will make a steady stream of revenue from their own citizenry. Now, I think ultimately the Gulf states have calculated that they can survive this oil price decline, and in some ways I would say Saudi Arabia, who is probably the main player in this whole saga, if you like, has decided that, you know, it will keep pumping out at 9.8 million barrels, and it will absorb those price crashes at least for the next 6-7 months.
Okay, just to go back to the smuggling issue, or the buying and selling, as it were, do you think that the Turkish authorities, the Iraq authorities, the Kurdish authorities, are they doing enough here? Are they worried about smuggling really when there's so many bigger issues at play, I guess, you know, trying to hold ISIL's advance?
Well, I think that the military side of this conflict is clearly the most important in people's minds. It's being able to degrade ISIS, being able to push them back into their heartlands, away from what the West might consider allies, so that would be the Kurds or Jordan or perhaps Baghdad as well. And so the focus tends to be mostly on that. And that's also, by the way, the media too. The media is covering that side of the conflict a lot more extensively than it is the sort of logistical side of the conflict. My view is that enough is not being done. I do think that there need to be significant penalties for those people that deal with ISIS and enable the financing of a terrorist organization, or whatever you like, call it an organization which has committed appalling human rights violations. And they're still able to make money, partly because their partners or enemies in the conflict zone are interested in trading with them. I mean, this is a traditional war economy we're looking at. And unfortunately, that means that if people can make some money on the side, they will. And so I think ultimately what we need to do is have a more concerted effort to choke off the supplies, not only of natural resources like oil, but also cash as well. And I think if we're not going to have a concerted effort, not just to defeat them militarily, but also logistically, then this problem is just going to take a much longer time to fix.
Well, then I suspect we'll be talking to you again about the situation in the future. Michael Stevens, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.